Without further ado, Mayor Art Bedke.
Okay. Thank you all for showing up for another rendition of the State of the City address. It's always beneficial to me to do the State of the City because it brings into focus everything that has gone on for the last year and puts some perspective on some of the things that are getting ready to happen over the next year. Okay, first off, I'd like to say thank you to our city staff, the people who actually have the feet on the ground and make everything work for us, and the city council who implements the actuality, the budget, the resources, and the direction that the city needs to go. This is an election year, and we have 3 of our councilors who are running for office again. Julia, Gina, and Haley are all up for election this fall, so let the good times roll for that. I'd also like to mention at this point that we have a new police chief. I think everybody knows that. Anthony Dallinger, who's back there in the corner. So, and he's doing a great job already and keeping the wheels on the police force. Good stuff. Okay, let's go through a few regional and community trends that have affected us here this last year. Starting with the growth in Idaho, the 7th fastest growing region, state in the country. You can see the other ones listed there. Moscow's population, we've gone up 4.6% since 2020, and that averages out over the vast long run of about 1.1% per year since they started keeping track back in about 1900. So we continue to grow at a stately pace, which makes it easy to handle development. I would say that Washington, D.C. over there on the East Coast may not be seeing 2.2% growth anymore. That's going to be a little sketchy. This microphone has to be aimed exactly right. Okay, we're doing really well. We have multiple consecutive years of growth at the University of Idaho. It's doing great, and especially in comparison to other universities that are actually losing enrollment, doing real well. But at our 1.1% growth rate in a town of 28,000, that means that we have about 300 people per year coming into town, and we need some place to house them. So at the density of about 2.5 people per dwelling unit, that means we need about 120 dwelling units per year. And we just barely hit the permitted 135 dwelling units that were permitted this last year versus 104 the previous year. So the development community is finally getting going on providing more housing, which means that theoretically, if you believe 101 economics, that means supply and demand will switch. Housing should become more affordable if we can continue this trend. City operations. This is what keeps all of us here. This is what provides us all with the services that we need, and they're really quite complicated. Moscow Water, we pumped 790 million gallons of water last year. That's a lot of water, and that counts everything from cooking to washing to baths, irrigation, the whole works. We've implemented a new project where we're replacing all of the water meters in the city over the next 7 years. These new water meters are very much more capable of metering flow. They don't depend on moving turbines to keep track of what the water's doing. And they also broadcast out onto the internet so you can track your own use hour to hour, day by day. And it is especially good for the city because we can watch that. And if somebody goes a little haywire, we know they've got a leak and can get that addressed more immediately. So this provides a lot of flexibility. We put in the first one at City Hall. It's working good, so we're going to continue that process and get everybody in the city online with this new water metering system over the next 7 years. Be patient, your day is coming. We try to encourage conservation. We do live on an aquifer that's steadily declining. It's down to about 7 inches a year, but it's still declining. And we can't really conserve our way into stability of the aquifer. We've got to find other sources, but until the time that we identify our other sources, we need to conserve. And one of the biggies that we've initiated is the toilet rebate program. By replacing the toilets, 73 of them across 50 households in 2024, that saved 421,000 gallons, more or less. From 1916 on, 1,400 toilets have been replaced across 654 houses, and that's a total of 6.1 million gallons of water that hasn't been just sent down the line to the wastewater treatment plant. Good stuff. If you're interested in replacing your old 5-gallon of flush toilet, we'll give you back $125 to help with the acquisition and installation of a new one. Wisescaping. This is one of the biggest water users we have. If you look at your water bill and if you water your lawn, you'll see a big difference between the winter and the summer. Big, big jump. So what we like to encourage is people to go into starting to wisescape their lawns. Get rid of the grass, put in something more native plant-like, something that uses less water. So with the Wisescape program, we'll pay you $150 for every 300 square feet that you rip up. And so far we've replaced almost 13,000 square feet of lawn. All right, we will continue with this one. So anyway, having replaced that much lawn, that's 98,000 gallons of water. And since the initiation of the program in 2016, that's 1.4 million gallons of water that we've saved. And frankly, a lawn that's nicely done with perennial foliage, native trees and things like that can look really, really good. Consult your landscape architect. Also, I see a lot of irrigation sprinklers in lawns going a little wonky at times. So we have irrigation audit systems set up, and we'll have somebody come by and check out and make sure your lawn is being equally watered, it's being efficient in what it does, and if it isn't, we'll have recommendations on how to fix that. So rather than have your sprinklers watering the asphalt of the street or going straight up in the air because the head is busted off, check it out, get an irrigation audit, and let's work to be more efficient with that. Palouse Basin Aquifer Committee, alternate water supply. This is really the only way that we can get another supply of water that'll guarantee our existential future. Currently, we're looking at taking a withdrawal from the Clearwater River, hopefully down above the paper plant, and piping it up the hill to Moscow and either treating it for direct use or re-injecting it into the aquifer. We haven't decided that part yet. But as of last night, City Council approved the acquisition of a grant from the Idaho Department of Water Resources to study this and lay out a direction both of where the withdrawal from the Clearwater occurs and where the pipe would go to get it up the hill to us. This is a huge project. It takes a lot of horsepower to hoist water up a couple thousand feet in any measurable amount. And we're proceeding forward with that. And stay tuned. We're trying to initiate the project, which is going to be decades long to get this thing done. But if we don't start now, we're that much further behind later on. The Water Reclamation and Reuse Center. This is where it all flows downhill. And we have Evan Timar, who runs the facilities over here someplace. And they do a great job of treating our water and getting it out, a whole lot. And let's see. Yeah, so we direct some of the water off to the university through holding tanks, and then it goes off to the university. They use it for the arboretum, the golf course, the other lawn spaces on campus. And that saves about 106 million gallons a year, which translates to about 4 billion gallons since we started this back in the early 70s. And 4 billion gallons, well, and I converted that over to acre feet. So if you had 1 acre 4 billion gallons would fill it up to about 12,200 feet high. That's a spectacular amount of water that's been saved just from the reuse of the water that goes through that plant. The guys at the sewer treatment plant also go out and monitor and clean out 70 miles worth of sewer pipe this last year. And that includes things that get into the pipes, mineral deposits, roots, fats, oils, and grease that sometimes get dumped down the drain and clog things up. They do a great job of making sure everything still flows in the correct direction. And believe me, we've heard from people where things ain't flowing the right way, and they are not happy that gravity is not working for them. Stormwater utility. This one is the one where you see the little sweeper running around town all the time, making great racket as it goes up and down your street, vacuuming things up. Well, it pulls up a lot of stuff. 1.12 million pounds of material got swept up. That's some huge amount, like 62,000 cubic feet of stuff that would otherwise go down the drains into the system and clog it up. But even with the sweeping that goes on, they still have to go through and clean out the catch basins, the manholes. So you see the truck sitting in the middle of the road and grump a little bit about it. It's blocking up traffic, and what are those people doing out there again? Well, they're pulling all the junk out of the manholes and the stormwater system so that it doesn't go downstream into Paradise Creek or clog up the system entirely. And they jet it out and do a very nice job of cleaning it up. They pull out, 1,300 cubic feet of debris, which is another crazy amount of stuff that gets sucked back out of there so the system continues to operate, and also so that we stay in good terms with the EPA and the National Pollution Discharge people. They will come for us if we don't stay on top of this stuff. 6 miles of pipe they go through, and we really don't know where every stormwater drainage pipe in town is because the stuff was put in over the years, not documented, and we're still finding things out about those and getting those pipes treated and back into compliance and good to go. Streets and roadways, everybody's favorite. So, mostly as in, why isn't it in front of my house and my route to work, please? So we get to it, but we've done 200,000 cubic yards of asphalt for the 2025 project. That's what we're projected for. That includes things like hand patching 1,900 square yards of roadway by hand, filling in the potholes that pop up from time to time. And that used 800,000 pounds of asphalt to get all of that done. It's a lot. Oh, one other thing about the roadway, we're also going into using rubberized surface treatment. So instead of the usual tar and pebble thing that makes a mess out of everybody's cars, chips windshields, things like that, we've gone to a rubberized seal that lasts as long but is much more flexible, and when you put it on top of pavement, like you can see here with the alligatoring, it doesn't allow the cracks to perpetuate themselves upwards. It seals it off, it's flexible, and so it lasts a lot longer, and you can put it on roadways that otherwise would be a little sketchy like this, and they're going to last, and probably for another 10 years. So we try to stretch every single bit of money we have to the best benefit of the roads in Moscow. Parks. Parks are maintained by 7 full-time people. It's 104 properties and 160 acres that they keep in good shape. We have a rotating program where we don't use pesticide on a particular park for a year and do that on a rotating basis to try to minimize the amount of pesticides and herbicides that we use. Tree maintenance, we're a tree city, but back in the day, Moscow did not have a single tree. Every tree you see in this town has been planted by somebody at some time. And our town is better for it, ecologically, environmentally, keeps the temperature down, makes the place look a whole lot better. 173 trees are in East City Park by themselves. 352 trees are downtown, and 104 of them are decorated with about 37,000 lights, that everybody sees when you go downtown. And it's pretty, it really is. It really shows up at the Light Up the Season parade that we have. 1,000 hours, half a man year is spent on the Hamilton Low Center, keeping the swimming pool maintained for the 40,000 people who use it every year. So there's a lot that goes on with the park with very few people. Next up, Sanitation Program. 30,000 tons of solid waste per year go out, and 2,500 tons of recycling. The picture there, if you haven't been out there, is the transfer station operated by Inland North Waste out on the Troy Highway a bit, and it's a big ongoing operation. We also recycled 6,500 tons of biosolids, the dried out, well, not dried out, but at least dewatered product from the wastewater treatment plant, and that goes out for turning into compost. Community and culture, and this is the stuff that makes Moscow, Moscow. We could be the same prosaic town that you see any place else in the US of A, but it's the arts that help make Moscow what it is. Recently, I think everybody saw this one down at the corner of A and Jackson, the new mural that was put in there on two sides. This is just the one side of it with local critters that run around. I think it looks great, by Jay Rogorczak. And we were lucky to get him. He's actually an illustrator, scientific illustrator, who did a really nice job putting this one together. Really impressed with this one. The arts department does a lot of other stuff too. We have the 3rd Street Gallery, and if you don't know where the 3rd Street Gallery is, it's in City Hall on the 2nd floor and 3rd floor, and it deserves a checking out because it's got rotating artists going through there. It changes every 3 months. You get a whole new exhibition in there. And in addition to the 3rd Street Gallery that the city sponsors, we do other things too. Let's see, you got the art walk that occurs from October to May with the big finale in June. Palouse Plein Air, which is where artists come in, do their painting outside of areas in the Palouse, and then they're all hung up in the 3rd Street Gallery, and you can come in and bid on them and get yourself some original artwork, really good artwork at not too great of an expense. Performance-wise, we also sponsor a poet laureate who works with the city and provides some clever commentary, incisive commentary at various meetings, and instructs people in classes on how to do poetry. So anyway, the arts department is helping Moscow live up to what you see on the entrance signs all around town. It says Moscow, Heart of the Arts. And this is part of what makes Moscow Moscow, is the attention to the arts program, because people really do care about it. You've got, by the way, until the 28th of this month to submit your ideas for the vinyl wraps for the signal boxes around town. You've seen the signal boxes with the artwork on them. You've got, what, about 2 weeks to get your submission in for that one. Recreation, 36,000 some patrons visited the pool this last year. The occasional closure because the weather's less than 50 degrees, and who wants to swim anyway at that temperature? But a bunch of other people at the HERC, the Hamilton Indoor Recreation Center, for basketball and other gym stuff going on, 18,000 some of them, and about 1,200 individual program participants with other programs that are listed, and you get those in the little brochure that comes out or is online and can be signed up for. Everybody's favorite, the Moscow Farmers Market. From May to November, they've added the 4th Street leg to the market footprint. It brought in $2.2 million in sales and averaged about 7,000 attendees per Saturday during that time. 156 vendors. The vendor list keeps growing and growing, and it's just a tremendous benefit to the whole city, and really hoping to keep things going for that. Current city highlights, current city priorities. First up, one of my personal favorites is our new airport. Started almost 10 years ago with a project to begin widening the runway and to install an instrument landing system that would decrease greatly the number of weather-associated cancellations we have. Been hugely successful. Like between November and February back in the day, it was like 90 cancellations because of weather. I think they've dropped down to about 3. So the airport is now much more reliable than it ever used to be. We put in the terminal, which opened this last May. And if you haven't flown, I encourage you to do so because the new terminal is fantastic. Genuine jetways to the plane, regular baggage carousel that goes in circles instead of chucking the bags through a plastic curtain at you. So much better, so much better. It's huge, it's comfortable. We have a concessionaire coming in soon to provide that early morning coffee that's so necessary for the 5 o'clock flight, pastries, things like that, full-on lunches and things like that later in the day. All of this was accomplished, all $250 million of this was accomplished with a local match of $18 million. $2 million came from Moscow, the rest came from other local entities. And I'm happy to say all of this was done and we have 0 debt left. In addition, we're also working on adding a 4th apron place for a 4th airplane that could be there simultaneously. I think the most we've had there so far are 2 737s at one time in there. We're prepping up to have 4. The airport is working on increased air service, bringing in more airlines, enhancing the schedule, but that's a slow uphill push that's pretty much out of control of the airport. All we can do is go out and make nice with the airlines and say, please, we've got a flying public here, bring more flights to us. Emergency radio. Until very recently, if there was an emergency, the firefighters and or police would show up and you get in a building like this and you've got no signal for your radio. So you're pretty much on your own. This is not an advantageous situation if there's a firefighter and the roof is caving in, he's squawking for help and nobody can hear. So with something like this, we've been working for a lot of years on getting new radio service installed that will bring us really enhanced coverage to the whole system. So we've got the radios in hand right now, currently working on putting in the radio repeaters, Paradise Ridge, Moscow Mountain, top of well number 10 out here at the state line, City Hall. So we're installing antennas so we get full, complete coverage and really helps. And thanks to our diligent staff on this one, the price for all of this came in $1 million less than was estimated. So good on the staff for really stepping up, watching it, and managing this very cleverly. Also, EMS. EMS is not a required service that the cities provide. It's not required by the legislature, surprisingly. Fire, yes. Police, yes. Not EMS. So EMS and fire are really supplied by our good volunteers, the volunteers who run the fire service and the EMS department, the emergency medical guys. Of late, it's become a bit of a crisis. We have answered 34% more calls in the past 8 years now than what we used to. I don't know why there are 33% more calls than there used to be. Maybe everybody's health has gone to pieces, who knows. But we had just a few paramedics and they were stretched thin and we were no longer able to deliver 24/7 paramedic level coverage. Not beneficial. So the volunteers in the city worked together to obtain funding to hire on 3 more paramedics so we can have solid 24/7, 365 coverage at a paramedic level. So that's in place. We've got 2 of them in hand. We've got another one that we're working through the recruiting process on. So doing very good, and the volunteers keep our fire insurance rates very low, and they really do need to be thanked. So when you see them floating around, thank them for the service that they provide to all of us that we don't know we need until that day when we actually need it. Here's a fun one, city shop facility construction. The city shop is where all of the vehicles that are owned by the city go for maintenance. It's where all of the sand and salt and trucks and snow plows and so on and so forth are stored. It was built in 1968. And so what's that, getting on 80 years old? 68. All right, 60 years. Darn, there was somebody who used to be a school teacher out there nailing me. Yes. You don't look 80. So, anyway, the place is falling apart, and the electricity is bad. The current shop has 2 bathrooms for like 30 people who get there at the same time during break. It's just not good anymore. And you can see the picture there of what the current shop looks like. And when it comes to some of the heavier equipment, we have the big stuff. It doesn't hardly fit in to the bays anymore for maintenance. We're projected to have a need for 77,000 square feet almost. We've currently got 21,000. So definitely just in sheer space alone, we're terribly deficient. So what do we do about that? We're going to initiate the construction of a new city shop addition, not the whole thing, just part of it. It's going to be 18,000 square feet of new shop for the fleet repair shop, and have that set up and ready to go by 2026. Another 5,000 square feet in the old building will be renovated to take care of that bathroom issue, as well as make it more accessible for everybody. It's a 2-floor operation, no elevator, so we need to fix all of that. And also the fact that even in the old shop, there's a great video floating around someplace of a flood of Hog Creek that has water going through somebody's office. And so that'll be handled too, more covered storage for things like salt, which would otherwise be melting in the rain. All of this is going to cost about $7.2 million. We took half of that, $3.6 million, from the ARPA funds, and then compounded that with savings, because we've known for a long time that we need a new city shop, so we've been funneling money into a capital account and holding it until the time came to do it. So now we're going to get a new facility out there that is badly needed and should last for the next 60 years. Downtown streets. Last time downtown was addressed was 1981. So the streets down there are 44 years old now, and everybody knows the condition of the aggregate crosswalks, the curbs, things like that. And we don't have $26 million that it would take to do the whole project in one fell swoop. So we're going to initiate smaller micro projects to try to address these issues one at a time, curbs here, sidewalks there, as we can afford them to get downtown done, because that is the center of the community. We use it a lot for social events and things like that. It might as well look good, and we need to take care of it. So slowly but surely, we'll get there. Partnering with the school district. The school district desperately needs another elementary school, especially with the closure of Russell School. So the city owns this chunk of property down on the south side of town, more or less directly across from the Arboretum and the South Fork of the Palouse River. It's about 44 acres, and so we're going to entertain a study with the school district because they need a site for an elementary school. We would like to have more play fields and parks down there, and if we work together, I think we can bring this in at a reduced cost for both entities and satisfy a lot of needs. It also puts another school in a different quadrant of town instead of having 3 elementary schools in the northeast corner. So with the growth, the Eddington subdivision that's going in there, changes overall in where the population is, it's going to be a good collaboration. Now, to keep the city on the rails, we come to the interesting bit of funding, which is another way of saying taxes. Moscow residents pay a goodly swatch in property taxes, I'm sure we all know. We get about $7.7 million a year in property tax. However, the police department alone, no aspersions to Anthony and the police department over there, but that costs us $7.4 million of those property tax dollars. Compare that with Moscow being about 28,000 people and $7.7 million in property tax to Lewiston that has a 30% greater population but gets 300% more property tax. And this is just because of the way the legislators set up the property tax system in 1978, and it is an albatross around our neck to this very day. Not good. So there's not a lot to be done unless we can bestir the legislature, other than be as thrifty as we possibly can to try to keep city services running. Another issue relative to all of those of you who own your own house is your property tax bill. Your whole property tax bill comes out, and when you live in the city, you assume automatically that that whole chunk of property tax money is going to Moscow, those greedy so-and-sos. But no, actually Moscow only gets about 25% of it. The school district gets about 43%, county gets about 25%, the city gets about 25%, the rest goes to cemetery, library, and North Latah Highway District funds. But the issue here is the legislature has not corrected anything for the homeowner's deduction in years. Back in the early 2000s, it was split pretty well between 50% property tax to commercial, 50% to the residential. And you can see here that it's been diverging ever since. About 2011 or 12, the legislature bumped the homeowner's property tax deduction by, what, $25,000 or something, and that's why you see a pinch point there. Since then, as the value of houses has risen, your tax bill becomes larger because you can only take off $125,000 of it. Your house price rises, as does your tax bill. And so right now, the homeowner is paying about 71% of the property taxes, and the businesses are paying about 29%. And it continues to diverge. So if you want your property taxes at home to go down, be aware that that would mean probably that the commercial guys are going to go up. And maybe things can rectify themselves and become more like the 50-50 proposition that it was back in the early 2000s. Lori McCann introduced a bill to bump up the homeowner tax deduction to $225,000, which would be more in line with about half the value of your house on average, completely shot down. So I don't see anything happening with that with our legislature this next year. More happily, we got some businesses moving in. As everybody knows, right over there, Home Depot is set up with the Great Wall of Moscow that has been built. And they're going to be opening a little bit later this spring, I guess. Chick-fil-A is moving out of the I-Sub, where they had only limited hours. They're going to take over the old Sangria building and move in there out here in the parking lot to the mall. Down in South Moscow, we've just annexed in about 50 acres, courtesy of Shelley Bennett et al., and that's going to be a new commercial slash light industrial area down there. And continued home building. We've got 3 pretty good sized subdivisions going on, the Eddington, the Woodbury, and Rolling Hills number 10. One wonders how many more Rolling Hills before they start running out of numbers. Coming up is, and what we've recently done too, is the Lilly and First Street. I don't know if anybody's been out there other than the residents in the area, but it's right near Otness Park. Reconstructed First Street, daylighted Hog Creek going through there, and it's looking a whole lot nicer up in that area. It makes it a whole lot easier for students to move through that area and across the highway onto campus. Very nice. Guess I should put that up there. So it makes it a whole lot easier for people to move around in that area, and it looks great. A Street up by the old Russell School was falling apart. That got a whole new treatment. It's relatively fantastic about how much it costs to redo a block of street. It's horrendous. So we don't do very many blocks of whole-scale reconstruction. Booster stations, we need fire flow. If a fire happens, the current systems that are in place don't have enough flow. You have to maintain something like 3,500 gallons a minute to go through a particular section of town in order to provide enough water to the fire department to extinguish the fire. 2 new boosters went in, Indian Hills and Ponderosa, so those are both up and running now and doing a pretty good job. I think we might have another 1 or so of them to put up even yet, but we've got that project almost finished. Indian Hills Park bathroom, the city got some estimates in that are ghastly, horribly high, so the city decided to do that themselves. So the city staff very ably once again took the project under their own hand and arranged for this giant crane to pick the whole bathroom up, lever it out to the side, and drop it onto the site where the plumbing already existed. So now it's got that. If you've taken your bike through Carroll Reary Brink Park, just north of the city ball fields, you know that you got a good bounce going through there. It was almost like trail riding up on the mountain or something. The roots from the trees had completely heaved the path, and we went through, clipped the roots to keep them from going back in there, put in kind of a boundary to keep them from heading back and doing the same again, repaved it, and now there's a very nice walking, biking path on the north side of the ball fields next to the creek. 6th Street Bridge that took forever and tomorrow to get done, but eventually it got done, and it's a whole lot better now than the culverts that used to be there. I think we're pretty safe from getting the thing washed out in as far ahead as anybody can see, but it makes a nice 4th spoke onto the roundabout at 6th and Mountain View now. And I've noticed a great decrease in the huge number of cars that used to back up there during our rush minutes. Pullman Road water main replacement just out here alongside the highway. You might have noticed that going on. Our main water producing wells are out here on the state line. The majority of the people in town are on the east side, so we need a large capacity system of pipes to carry the water through to the reservoirs on the east side of town, and this is it. And I think it was accomplished with fairly minimal disruption and really enhances our ability to provide water to the reservoirs and the citizens. Well, number 6, out at the city shop. This picture does not do that thing justice. If you stood at the right angle, it had a downwind lean to it that was pretty serious, and I don't think it would have survived the most recent major windstorm that we had. So that was replaced, made intact, and so now we've got a long-term operation with that well if and when we need it. Also put on, instead of chlorine tanks to add as an antimicrobial to the water, instead of having a bunch of gas cylinders a la World War I trench warfare sitting around out there, put in a chlorine generator, which essentially takes salt and splits it into sodium and chlorine. You harvest the chlorine, use that for the water. Much less detrimental than having chlorine gas floating about. And Chief Nickerson back there, or was, looks like he had to split, but this is one of his favorites. We got another new fire engine, number 20. So it's exactly the same as number 27, and this replaces some of the engines that were over 20 years old. They were working great, but after 20 years, you can't get parts for them anymore. So the city shop guys were busy beating new parts out in the back room and to keep the fire engines running. So now we've got 2 new ones, and we've got an amortization plan in place so that after 20 years, we'll actually have the money in the bank to just go out and get a new one. And here's your most recent update coming up this summer, everybody's favorite disruptions. So you can just scan down through those and see what we've got going on this summer. So the city shop, White Avenue outside of Safeway, between Safeway and the North Idaho Highway District, repave all of the patches on patches, put in a 10-foot wide bike lane that continues on out to Mountain View. Let's see, what else? Camas Street water, water reclamation, Archimedes pump. Got to keep the wastewater treatment plant with the ability to move stuff around. D Street gets pedestrian ramps. That just means the curbs that just drop square off get cut out and a ramp put in to help with ADA accessibility. C Street along the south side where the recycling center is. It's narrow, it doesn't have sidewalks on it, so the C Street frontage improvement will add sidewalks, trees, and make C Street in that one block area a little more pedestrian and user-friendly. Public Avenue gets the curves on that substandard X-County road. Going to replace the curbs, put in sidewalks, gutters, stormwater, et cetera, on that swatch. East City Park stage gets replaced, the one that outlived its usefulness. And in fact, it so outlived its usefulness that last spring, one of the maintenance guys went up and said, this thing looks really bad, and gave it a shove, and the whole roof, over it went. So now that's why the city stage does not have a roof on it, and we're going to be working this summer to create another stage with a roof and reorient it slightly for the benefit of the audience, who will have better seating, better sight lines. The performers won't be looking square into the setting sun. More sewer main replacements. Highway 95 extending pathways to get out to where the new 95 comes in. And so that's what you've got to look forward to this summer. And finally, questions on this, but I will say that this is also my final and valedictory State of the City address. I'm not going to be running for office again this fall, so you'll have a new guy or girl or woman up here next year presenting on this. So anyway, if anybody has any questions, happy to hear them and possibly pawn off the answers to city staff.
Working with the school district, do we know what they're doing with Russell School?
No. So, no, it's still there. I think they're contemplating any number of different possibilities for it, whether to keep it in the school district for other uses, sell it off for, I don't know, condos or offices or something. Yeah. But anyway, it's got super duper views from up on the upper floors looking out to the west. Nice. Yeah. Miss Haley.
Yeah, it's not a loaded question. I was going to add, they are, the last school board meeting, I don't know if Dulcie's here, they have a commission to study to understand the viability and costs to maintain Russell and turn Russell into a school again. So they're starting with that. But you're right, it's a public meeting. Mr. Mayor, I don't mean this to be a loaded question, and I know you're one on the airport board, but we've seen some of our peers in neighboring towns, and I see Tony over there too, who have allocated city funds or county funds for revenue guarantees to entice airlines to come. Is that something that the board has an appetite for, or what's, I guess if you want to speak or give any more color to the conversation about recruiting airlines?
I could be real colorful, but no. No, the airport would like to be a little more capitalist about this and let the route speak for itself. It either finances itself or it doesn't. That being said, the airport does have banked a little over $1 million for revenue guarantee, which in the big scheme of things ain't much, but it might sweeten the pot a little bit for somebody to move in. So other than that, it's what Tony Bean, there he is, talks about is recruiting other airlines to the airport to provide service to different locations and enhance the service we have. And he calls it speed dating, because you go to airport conferences and you wind up going up to these hotel rooms or suites that the airlines have rented, and you've got 15 minutes in front of each airline as you go through touting how luscious and lovely you are, and please bring your air service to our airport. So that goes on, and we keep Moscow-Pullman, not Pullman-Moscow, Moscow-Pullman Airport's name in front of the airlines with the eye towards developing more service, more frequent service, more destinations. It's just a long haul. Oh, Tim Thompson way in the back.
Along those lines, Mayor, one thing we all can do, though, is use our airport more instead of going up to Spokane or down to Lewiston. take advantage of the place and show more service. The other thing too is if you're going down south to California, go through Boise. It's a straight shot instead of a dog leg. I think a lot of people remember the old days, as you mentioned earlier, when we lost a lot of flights, but we got the instrumentation now to do much better. So it's time to change that paradigm and start flying out of Moscow Pullman instead of going up to Spokane.
Hear, hear.
Hey everybody, Stevie from Inland North Waste. You saw the solid waste processing facility up on the screen, but you don't get to hear a lot about us because the city contracts us to run our solid waste processing facility, and we do all of the curbside collections in the city of Moscow. So I just have three key points I wanted to shout out, is that we've invested over $700,000 in that facility over the past year. We implemented an in and outbound scale at the facility, so hopefully your trip to the center will be a lot faster. We've got a new scale house. We've implemented 200 and 300 gallon containers throughout the city of Moscow, new crane in the transfer station, so things are up and coming. And don't forget to download our My INW app for all of your collections reminders.
One more extension on that is that the city is looking at moving the yard waste recycling and recycling center from its current place elsewhere in town if we can find the land for it, to make a better traffic flow for the yard waste and better use of the facility altogether, and then recycle the building into something that, my personal favorite, I'd like to see it turn into 2 breweries, and then we could turn the whole area into the brewery zone, and that would be good. So, anybody on this side? None there? Bev?
When you're talking about the property tax and the bulk of the property tax being paid by the homeowners, as the homeowners exemption rises, there's also we have a lot of rentals in town. So all the properties that are rentals do not get that homeowners exemption. So you've got people who are paying rent who are actually paying more property tax.
Actually,
Keep rising.
rents keep rising, but commercial apartments, especially the larger complexes, they're in with the rest of the commercial. They're paying less and less. For example, one large development that I know of in my area is now paying $22,000 a year less than they used to. And if you believe that the renters ever got to see any of that back, you would be sadly mistaken.
But what I see, like in my neighborhood, is the people who buy houses and then rent them. And those people who are renting a house are paying more in rent than their neighbors who are paying their mortgage.
Actually, rental houses pay the usual standard single-family house rate. They don't fall into the commercial area.
Okay. So they're, okay.
Yep. Yeah.
The request for the legislature to adjust that discount, how do you recommend we as individuals assist in getting that done?
Reach out to your legislator and say that you'd like to see this readjusted, a reindex of the homeowner's deduction. Lori McCann has led that and been somewhat stymied by some of the colleagues down in Boise. So, but that's the quickest, easiest way to rebalance that whole equation instead of more convoluted solutions that have been proposed by other legislators down there. Scott Grow in particular, who was the author of this spaghetti line of funding that's supposed to help school districts at the same time reduce property taxes. And I don't know if that's working so well. I think it saved me a couple $100 last year. Meh. Yep. Yes.
Hi, I want to thank you so much, speaking of the legislature, for testifying this morning in the hearing on a bill that would have changed how we elect our Moscow City Council people. And we're able to get that bill held in the committee. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'd point out that Haley was also on that same call. So, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, a lot of your projects rely on contracts and outside money.
And yes, we can pick on the state legislature, probably to no good, but we can pick on them. But on the other hand, now we've got the federal government that's following right along with the state. Have you identified any of these wonderful projects that you've got planned that could be impacted by whatever we're doing with the federal government right now?
We haven't got that far. Got to wait for the other foot to drop until we find out exactly what in Pandora's box awaits us, really. So we have to wait it out on that one. I do know that on a more personal basis, a lot of our friends, family, colleagues have been axed lately here in this area. A lot of them, even long-term productive employees who just recently got promoted because they do such good work, and that makes them a probationary employee again, and out the door you go for the lingo they use in their memos is poor performance when you just got promoted. It's kind of good grief. So we don't know where all that's headed. We just have to wait and see. Yes?
On a slightly funnier note, I'm just curious. The chlorine machine, you break the salt into sodium, what happens to the sodium?
Where's Evan?
The salt's used in a process of salt electrolysis, so it generates, so you use electricity to use the salt and produce electrolysis, that therefore then generates the chlorine. So the salt is consumed.
I assume that means the sodium just goes down the drain. So, yeah, we are looking for an LED UV system to sanitize the wastewater as it goes out into Paradise Creek at the other end. So we're looking at installing some UV lights out there in an LED sense and not super power hungry UV tubes that will help with the requirements of the EPA on the way out.
Mayor, one more question.
Okay. Anybody who hasn't had an oar in the water yet? Louise, where would we be without you?
I would just like to compliment the city in starting with such things as the police department and the fire department to the street maintenance and all the improvements I've seen over the last year, 2 years, and say, you do good work with our tax money. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise.